Well, I'm John Calvert, the Father Henry W. Casper Associate Professor of History. I teach courses related to the medieval and modern periods of Middle East history here at Creighton University. My book is a biography of Sayyid Qutb, the influential Egyptian ideologue of Islamic revolution. He lived from 1906 to 1966. No other Islamist thinker, with the possible exception of the South Asian Abu al-Maududi, exerted as much influence on the development of Islamism, both in his own time and in the generations that followed. My book traces Sayyid Qutb's thought from his origins in a small village in Upper Egypt until his execution at the hands of Egypt's Gamal Abdel Nasser regime in 1966. In so doing, my book pays attention to the gamut of influences, social, economic, political, cultural, that influenced Qutb's worldview and eventually propelled him in the direction of radical Islamism. Ultimately, it's the story of an individual and the times in which he lived, of objective circumstance and subjective experience, and how these two related to one another. All too often in studies of Islamism, scholars treat the phenomenon as resulting from material discontent. And what I want to do in this book is really explore Qutb's religious imagination. I want to explore the reasons, the how and why he turned the religion that he inherited from his father into an ideology of radicalism.
One thing you told me that I thought was really interesting is what got you interested in the topic in the first place. This wasn't your original area of study.
Yeah, I went to Cairo in the late 1980s with the intention of studying Arabic and medieval Islamic history. But in those days, radical Islamist movements were again on the move. This is some years after the assassination of Anwar Sadat, and the name of Sayyid Qutb was in the air. And I wanted to know more about this individual. So I went to the bookstalls of Cairo, I talked with people and so forth, and it appeared to me that this was a subject worthy of investigation. Bear in mind, this was long before 9/11. Islamism really wasn't on the radar of most North Americans. It took me a number of years before I finally got around to studying Qutb in any depth, but the origins of my sort of interest in Qutb date back to my time in Cairo.
What was the most interesting thing you found? What was the one thing that stands out in all the research you've done?
I think the thing that really sort of intrigued me about Sayyid Qutb was, again, his religious imagination. This was a person who was a poet and a literary critic before he became an Islamist. He was always interested in another world, in the supernatural, in a realm that existed, beyond the dross of everyday life. And I was really sort of interested in how he sort of grafted his Islamism onto this sort of spiritual disposition that he had ever since he was a child.